Well, good evening and welcome to the 40 Days for Life Grassroots Webcast. I'm joined tonight by Steve Carlin, the campaign director for 40 Days for Life. Steve, how's
Glad
it
to
going?
be in Texas. Glad to be here. That's freedom.
Freedom is here in Texas and slowly trickling to other places across the country. We hope it comes to a state near you very soon. We are at the headquarters of 40 Days for Life, the now closed Planned Parenthood abortion facility where 40 Days for Life first started, right out there on the sidewalks in 2004. And this facility, by the grace of God, is one of over 100 abortion facilities that we have seen close as a result of 40 Days for Life. We're going to talk about that tonight. We are in front of the beautiful memorial to the unborn. There were 6,400 abortions in this facility when it operated as a Planned Parenthood. This is the facility that Abby Johnson ran. It's now, thanks be to God, the headquarters of 40 Days for Life. We're glad that all of y'all joined us tonight. We're going to cover a lot. We're going to hear from former Planned Parenthood manager Sue Thayer. We're going to hear from former abortion provider Dr. Haywood Robinson. We're going to hear from a couple of leaders and get a world tour. But Steve, tonight we're going to start with the most important thing at 40 Days for Life, what makes this work possible, and that's a word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, you are the creator of life, and we thank you for calling us to this mission field to try to save lives and change souls and change hearts and to do your will. And we ask you to please bless us tonight and bless 40 Days for Life leaders and participants, volunteers all around the world. Bless those women who even now are contemplating abortion, those who chose life during the recently completed campaign. And we also pray for conversion of heart, of the workers, the volunteers, the clinic escorts, everyone who is involved in abortion. We ask for their conversion, and we ask you to use us as you will to help hastily bring about the end of abortion in our communities, in our countries, and throughout the entire world. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. And this is the Grassroots video webcast, and it should be, because there's a lot going on. The world has been looking at the United States. We just elected last November. We didn't, but a lot of people did. The most pro-abortion government in the history of our country, of the United States, and that's not a sort of a pro-life propaganda or sensational thing to say. It is the sad reality of where we are right now in America. We are in a shameful group of people, of countries where our laws allow abortion through all 40 weeks, just like North Korea, China, Vietnam, and Canada. And so this is the Grassroots Podcast because, Steve, things are awful in Washington, D.C. if you're pro-life in America. It doesn't matter what you think about our president, whether you like him or love him. This is the most pro-abortion government we've ever had. And at the beginning of the year, we talked about what they may do or could do or what they've promised to do, and now they're doing it.
Yeah, not empty promises, but at the same time, I think when this campaign got started on February 17th, I think we were still taking that moment to be sad and to whine about it even a little bit. And, this is going to happen in the federal funding of abortion. Maybe they're going to change the Supreme Court. All these different things that we've been worried about, getting rid of the Hyde Amendment, so many different problems and ways that life is under attack. But we needed to get over it quickly, not get over it in the sense that we accept it, but get over it in the sense of time to roll up our sleeves, hit our knees, and go out to the sidewalk. And that's exactly what people did. And that's why this was the largest 40 Days for Life campaign in history, not just in terms of the number of cities, 567 cities, largest spring campaign ever, but also in terms of how many people went out to the sidewalk in those 567 cities.
Yeah, and everybody, you can whine, you can complain, you can yell about the government, you can curse politicians, but in the end, that doesn't do any good. No matter what country you're living in, 40 Days for Life is in over 60 countries around the world, and America is not Washington, D.C., thank God. And no matter where you live, your government doesn't get to decide who you are, how you raise your family, or what you do to save the life of your most vulnerable citizens in the womb. And that was really the great reaction. As bad as everything is politically, it wasn't the end of the world, and it's not the end of the world.
I think the big question people ask is, what now? What can we do now when there's no help on the way from Washington, D.C.? And the answer to that question was go out to the sidewalk and pray in front of the abortion facility. More people than ever before did that. And as a result, we've seen more than 700 lives saved during this campaign. That's a pretty darn good number for a 40 Days for Life campaign. We even still have a few straggling reports trickling in, but more than 700 lives that were scheduled to be aborted saved at that very last moment, not because of what happened in the White House or the Supreme Court or any state capitol building or provincial or whatever government system you have, not because of what's going on there in public office, but because ordinary people took 1 hour of time and went out to pray. It made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and I wanted you in a minute to share the cumulative stats because we update those and it's a good update. But we had a lot of people come out to the vigils, and we always joke going into the spring campaign. Of course, in Texas, our weather is awesome, and in February, apparently it's not in Wisconsin.
In some places, yeah.
In Wisconsin. But we had record numbers of people come out to the sidewalks. There was a huge reaction to what's going on in Washington, D.C. at the grassroots level, and we were very thankful for you, all of you who took time, whether it be 30 minutes a week or an hour a week or an hour a day, to come out and to peacefully pray. It made a tremendous difference. And what are those stats at? We just mentioned the over 700 babies saved at this campaign, and those reports are still coming in, but where are we at?
We now also have, for the number of workers who have left their jobs, we've seen 7 more during the course of this campaign. That brings us up to 217 who have left their jobs after converting during or right after a 40 Days for Life campaign. We also, during the course...
It's funny with the workers, I don't mean to cut you off, but people are always like, is that just people quitting? Because thankfully, the turnover at abortion facilities is huge, as it should be. This is a miserable place to work when it was a Planned Parenthood. There's already that natural tension inside your abortion facility and every other one, plus we're out there, and it's just, it's horrible. That stat, the 217, those aren't the workers that drive in every day to an abortion facility where we have 40 Days for Life and say, I'm so sick of these religious nuts outside, I quit, I hate you, and I'm leaving. We have those workers too, but we don't track them. These are people that actually had a change of heart.
Yes, in fact, we had a number of reports of workers who quit their jobs, and I asked the local campaign leaders, do you know it was because of a conversion? They said, well, we can't prove it. We think it might have been, they were much more friendly as they left on their last day than they ever had been before. But because they didn't know it was a conversion, that's why we err on the side of caution. These are conservative numbers. We're not out here with clickbait or artificially pumped up numbers. These are, at the bare minimum, we know of these 7 who have left. And I think the worker exodus from the abortion industry is a reason why we continue to see abortion facilities close. And I think that the Lord really gave us a powerful consolation this campaign, because amidst the political chaos, we saw abortion facilities that we confirmed closed in 3 cities this time. The first one was Chicago, Illinois. I had the chance to go out for the celebration in front of that now closed abortion facility where pro-lifers have been praying for many, many years.
Not a pro-life city.
No, not a pro-life city. Then London, England, which we'll hear from Robert later, but last time I checked, also not a pro-life city.
No, and you'll see him in front of that closed facility a little later tonight.
And then number 110 all time, the number 110th closed abortion facility, brace yourself, Seattle, Washington.
Not a pro-life city, but yeah, it just shows. We run out there and our wonderful heroes, the local leaders, when you're recruiting somebody to go pray in front of an abortion facility, people look at you like you're crazy or, oh, that's good that you do that, but I'm not going out there. But it shows that prayer and fasting and showing up are not talking points. It's a reality when you tap in to divine grace and the power of the Holy Spirit. We certainly saw that, but we had a landlord story, and I want you to talk about that because we have a lot of facilities that are not freestanding like the one that we're in right now, but Planned Parenthood is in a strip center or a business park.
Yes, that is true, and this is a location, Owings Mills, Maryland. We're going to talk with the leader, Dr. Jay Walton, in just a little bit. I had the chance to sit down with him and talk earlier this week. And Dr. Walton was out, and the landlord noticed he's up picking up trash around the building as they pray, just trying to be a good citizen and steward in the community. And this landlord, who at first wasn't happy to see his presence there, they began to grow a little bit closer over the course of the campaign. So I'm not going to quite spill those details just yet, but we'll talk with Dr. Walton in just a few minutes.
Yeah, and we've traveled a lot. So many people, Sue Thayer, you'll hear from her, Dr. Haywood Robinson. We traveled a lot this spring, took all the precautions to protect against COVID, but we were everywhere, and it was really awesome. I know for me, we had I'm blaming you for this personally because we had the Texas freeze where it was 8 degrees here and everybody lost power and water and cell phones. We were completely stranded at my house for about a week. And so I wasn't able to go to Columbia, Missouri and do their kickoff early on. So I went a few weeks later, and I've been to that facility a couple of times. Planned Parenthood there. We have a wonderful leader, Kathy Fork. She's a hero. She's been leading 40 Days for Life there forever. And they've had some nutsos come out to the, I forget the name of the
Guild of Silly Heathens.
The Guild of Silly Heathens. We don't suggest that you Google that or endorse them or get their t-shirts, but they've gone out and protested and yelled all sorts of profanity, and they're just crazy. And not even they showed up when I went out there because it was an absolute monsoon, and I've been to now nearly 500 abortion facilities over the last 15 years, and this was the rainiest it had ever been. It was cold, the wind was blowing. Thank God they had a sound system, and so many people came out. It was awesome, and I know you're seeing some of the pictures from that trip, but it was just a sea of umbrellas. The weather did not deter anyone, and Planned Parenthood just doesn't have that. The abortion industry doesn't have that at the grassroots. And you do, because you make the decision that whether it's sleeting or raining or snowing, we go out there because unborn children are being murdered in the most barbaric fashion. And that is worthy of our discomfort. It's worthy of rain.
There's been a lot of miracles as a result of it. Just an hour and a half or so from here at the Planned Parenthood in Houston, the largest abortion facility in the Western Hemisphere, there was a woman who showed up for an abortion appointment. She ended up choosing life thanks to the vigil, and the next day she showed up and she joined the 40 Days for Life vigil. That sounds like maybe a cheesy story you'd make up, but this is 100% true. It happened, and one of my favorite stories, we're not going to show the picture, even though it's a beautiful picture, because we want to make sure we have permission from all the moms before we do it, but in Greenville, South Carolina, I've got a picture of 7 moms who chose life, and they had a baby shower for all 7 of them all at once, and they're all there lined up receiving their gifts and celebrating the gift of life that they are carrying that they almost lost to the abortion facility.
And nothing replaces that. That's why we go out there, is to save a baby, and those stories that we've sent out during the campaign, and we'll get more reports. But the other thing, and you mentioned the 7 abortion facility workers who had a change of heart and left their jobs, it's just, that never gets old. There's one of those former workers, the only Planned Parenthood manager to ever lead a 40 Days for Life campaign, and she didn't lead it anywhere. She led it outside of her former workplace, and that is our very own Sue Thayer. She is a great example of courage. She was like seeing her former staff members go in and go to work, and she's like, hey, how's it going? And so if she can go out and pray at her former facility, anybody can. But certainly if she can lead a campaign, anyone can. And Sue was very busy this spring, going to a lot of locations, and we are fortunate to have her on the Grassroots Webcast tonight. Sue, take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, everybody. I am thrilled to come to you today and share some of the highlights from our last 40 Days for Life vigil. I was blessed and honored to be able to go to many different places and states. I wish I had time to share all of it with you, because I could tell you great stories from each place, but I got to go to Washington State to celebrate a closing of a Planned Parenthood there in Kent. And we had a wonderful party on the sidewalk. Actually, we had it right on the property of Planned Parenthood, because Mary, our leader there, got permission for us to be on the property, which was incredibly awesome, to stand on a former abortion facility and have all that prayer. Of course, there was an angry person driving by that saw us on there, and she goes, "You can't be on the private property." And we tried to explain, but she was too angry to hear what we were saying. But anyway, that was a wonderful time. I visited 6 other locations in Washington State, got to drive my little rental car on a ferry and go to Bremerton, Washington to see Lori and all the folks there. I was in Bellingham and Mount Vernon, several locations, so I had a great time there. I also got to go to Oklahoma, and I was in 3 spots there, and then went on to Texas. And Lubbock is a first-time vigil, and they were really rocking and rolling there. They had the street closed off and lots of great stuff going on there. And then From Texas, I went on to Florida and saw 4 of our vigils and leaders and volunteers there. And then I had a trip, my first trip of the vigil was to Wisconsin, and that was during the super cold weather that we had even in Texas. It was when they were getting snow there, and I think it got down to 40 degrees below zero where I live. So it was chilly, but I went to Wisconsin for a Pregnancy Resource Center banquet in Waukesha, Life's Connection. And of course, while I was there, I love to visit all of the great vigils that we have. But I want to tell a funny story that happened, a kind of a miracle story. One of the pictures that I like to share when I am at a Pregnancy Resource Center banquet or when I speak, if I do a PowerPoint, one of my favorite signs is look at the ultrasound. And I have a great picture of a guy holding this sign, and he doesn't really talk to anybody, I don't think, but he holds this sign to remind women to look at the ultrasound. And of course, when you go into a Planned Parenthood, they don't show you the ultrasound. And so it's just a reminder to women that are abortion minded that they should see their baby before they do what they're going to do. So I had that up on the screen, and Dan Miller, our leader there that was at the event that night, had a volunteer from 40 Days that said, Dan, I like that sign. Can you make me one? And of course, Dan Miller's a great leader, and he said, sure, how many do you want? And his volunteer said 2. And so Dan made 30. Dan thinks big, and I love that. All of our leaders do, but he made 30 of these signs that said, look at the ultrasound. So they were down praying at the abortion center, and it was on a day that they were closed. And Dan didn't say, you know, the center's really closed, we probably don't need to have look at the ultrasound signs. They had just come off the printer, and so they were literally hot off the press, but he handed out all these signs, and so they were holding them and standing out there praying. Well, a woman comes down, and she's looking to go to the abortion center. And Dan calls it GPS, God's positioning system. And instead of ending up at the abortion center, she ended up at the pro-life place across the street. And she knew she was in the wrong place, so she starts to head over to the abortion center, and then she sees all these folks out there with the signs that say, look at the ultrasound. So she turns around and goes back to the pro-life center and said, who are those people? What are they doing? And what does that sign mean? And so the gal at the center said, well, they're faith-based people, and they're praying, you know, for women to not have abortion. And the look at the ultrasound sign means that before you decide to choose abortion, you really should look and see, you know, your little tiny baby. So she did, and she chose life. So that's one of my favorite stories, and I could tell you countless dozens from just the places that I visited. So God is at work, and He is moving, and He is helping us in our effort to save babies. But we know that our battle is such a spiritual battle, and I've said before, and I've thought about it a lot, that I think God spares us from seeing the spiritual realm, because if we could see the battle that rages over those abortion facilities, it would be too scary for us. But when we come out and pray there, we strengthen the good guys, God's angels, and we bring light to a very dark place, and that is what 40 Days for Life is all about. So the workers need us out there, the moms need us out there, the people going by need us out there, and we change lives. Our prayers change lives, and God uses us in ways that we don't ever see. I was in Denton, Texas, and they're far away. Where they stand is far away from the entrance to the abortion facility, but they're on this super busy, almost like an interstate. And the people going by are so blessed to see them out there. And they get some angry stuff too, but a lot of happy honks. And they stand in the ditch and wave and yell and shout and happy thumbs up. So all different ways that God uses us and uses our prayers. But I just know that God is counting on you to be out there. The tomb is empty. It was empty on Easter Sunday, and it's going to stay empty. We have hope in Jesus Christ, and we know that God is on our side. Plus, we've read the end of the book, so we know that life wins, God wins, and we must never give up. Thank you so much for all you do. God bless your efforts. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Sue and Steve. We've led a lot of local campaigns. It's just awesome when you have a former worker come out to your vigil and a former Planned Parenthood manager, and Sue has just done amazing work. Turning from something positive like Sue Thayer into a topic that everyone's tired of, including us, but we need to mention it. Governor Cuomo in New York.
Somehow,
Still governor of the
New York.
state of New York, and we so admire all of our wonderful New York volunteers and the wonderful leaders. We have campaigns throughout the state of New York, and they have their hands full. Their governor is insane, in my opinion. But, you know, when he didn't reluctantly allow abortions at 40 weeks in 2019. 2019, we've said it on previous webcasts, it was the year of infanticide. We crossed that inevitable line. We're in the United States of America. We were moving the goal line. When are we comfortable with aborting a baby? When can we sleep at night and an abortion happen? And the state of New York said 40 weeks, and they didn't say it with any hesitation or this is difficult, but the law allows it. And there was none of that. Governor Cuomo was smiling. They lit up the Empire State Building. And that moment came and went, and it caused people to have righteous anger, and it made people mad. It made a lot of people say, I'm glad I don't live in New York. But the reality is that came and went, and that had major implications. And people were having late-term abortions, and they were getting abortions up to 40 weeks, and we saw it at the Grassroots outside those abortion facilities. But that can't stop us, and it didn't stop those wonderful folks in New York who went out to 40 Days for Life campaigns, and we saw a beautiful result this spring.
Yes, in Schenectady, New York, which is really just miles from the governor's residence in Albany, Schenectady, New York, they were having a campaign event, and there's a wonderful woman out sharing to the volunteers, to the attendees at the event, the story of how the 2 children she lost to miscarriage awakened in her an even greater respect for life, and that led to her getting involved in 40 Days for Life. And so she is sharing the testimony of the humanity of the children that she lost to miscarriage, and unbeknownst to anybody, there's a woman just kind of passing by, and she hears this talk, and she stops and she listens a little bit. It turns out that she was 29 weeks pregnant and intent on having a 3rd trimester abortion of the sorts legalized by Governor Cuomo. And so she listens and she approaches the volunteers and asks them for help. Thanks be to God, they had a mobile ultrasound bus at that campaign event, and she was able to, right there, the whole crowd goes silent, they back off, they give her space. She gets an ultrasound and she chooses life for her 29-week baby that otherwise would have been subject to, again, a late-term abortion so brutal they're not even legal in most of secular Europe, only those countries that we don't want to be on a list with, China and North Korea. But Cuomo didn't do anything to stop it, but ordinary people who took an hour of time to go out and pray, they did stop it.
And we've talked about this a lot. I mean, there's no clean abortion. There's not, oh, you were only 8 weeks or you were only 10 weeks. And we don't respond to that when we're excited about the baby. It's like, oh, you're 10 weeks along? Well, I'll get really excited when you're 29 weeks. We don't do that. But we do it for abortion. But every abortion is violent and bloody and a complete massacre. It has to be to end the life of an unborn child. But there is something different and sobering when you're at a 40 Days for Life vigil and have been in front of Leroy Carhart's, a late-term abortion facility in Maryland, and when you see a woman who's showing go in for an abortion, those are the ramifications of places like New York and these other states that just kind of throw up their hands and say, yeah, we're going to allow this till 40 weeks. And by the way, if the baby girl survives, we're going to leave her on the table to suffocate. It is absolutely, barbaric. And you get these great stories of a baby saved. If they can abort a baby at 29 weeks, then surely we can go out and try to save one at 29 weeks. And you mentioned this, but it's true. Most of Europe, if they were a state in the United States, they'd be one of the most pro-life states. Most of Europe only allows abortion through 12 weeks. I mean, it's much more regulated, even though they're a much more secular culture, which is why we're in that category with North Korea and China and Vietnam and Canada.
When you say it out loud and you hear the phrase North Korea,
it sounds like those guys are making that up on the webcast.
Yeah.
And man, don't we wish we were. But we're not, and that's why we go out, and that's why we pray. and while we fast. But another bright light was London, England, where when Robert Cahoon brought 40 Days for Life to England in the fall of 2010, and he just heard about it going on in the United States, and he led his first campaign. I'll never forget The Guardian, which is, for those of you who are interested, not a pro-life publication at all. They criticize Robert. They've criticized us for years, but it's still, bad coverage is still good coverage in England. But they said that 40 Days for Life was an American-style protest that started in the Wild West hills of Texas. And like Texas was like a curse word. And we're here. There's no Wild West hills that I'm aware of. But anyways, he has done such a great job. And Robert, through his leadership and through the wonderful people in the UK, they closed one of the largest abortion facilities in London, and Robert went out and recorded a video in front of that now closed facility. Robert, take it away.
Hi, this is Robert Coon, Director of International Campaigns for 40 Days for Life, and I'm outside the Wistons Clinic in Brighton that's recently said they are closing. It's for sale for £3 million. We've had a campaign here for years. What incredible news. This is our story, seeing abortion centres close. It's going to be the 6th abortion centre closing following a 40 Days for Life campaign. The local campaign team are ecstatic. This is one of the most liberal cities in the United Kingdom, and yet we still have seen an abortion centre close here. Pills by post mean half the abortions are happening at home. These large abortion centres are vulnerable to closure, just like BPAS Streatham closed as well. But I'm in awe of the amazing international leaders we have for 40 Days for Life all around the world. We've had stories of babies saved, life-changing encounters outside abortion centres. Michelle Kaufman in Auckland had a closing rally of 300 people. They had some lockdown issues with intermittent lockdowns suddenly announced on her, but she did an incredible job leading that campaign. Really great effort. Likewise, Tony Jenkinson challenging campaign with protesters in Christchurch, New Zealand, and Claire McLean did a great job in Wellington as well. Thank you to our New Zealanders. Over in Nigeria, we had 10 babies saved. Maureen Aduba saw many babies saved in Jos, Nigeria, reaching out to university students there. Incredible job. And Yusuf in Abuja in Nigeria also saw 6 babies saved, a first-time campaign. Brilliant effort, doing outreach all across the city. Likewise, in Nairobi in Kenya, Lynette, a mum who was in a crisis pregnancy but chose life, reaching out to people in a similar situation to herself, shared her testimony on our emails during this campaign, along with Kevin Duffy, a former senior abortion executive for Mary Stopes, shared his story on the podcast. And Tobias, our leader, reaching out to the slums in Kenya, doing an incredible job. Shout out to all those great leaders. Caleb, likewise in Tanzania, reaching 10,000 people with his community outreach in Tanzania. In Germany, we've had challenges with public witness, with buffer zones in Pforzheim, challenging the local court there, the local council in the local court, and also Frankfurt having a 150-metre buffer zone. Nevertheless, the witness in Wiesbaden in the streets has been there. They've done a great job. In the UK, we've had 15 campaigns. That's been an absolute record. It's been hard with the lockdown in the UK, but we've had prayer walks, and we've had a safe baby in Liverpool. We've also had a volunteer given a fine by the local authorities for going for a walk, which we're challenging too at this time. In Lisbon, Paula Pintamel, 6 babies saved in Lisbon. Great effort there. One of the babies was born this campaign from the previous campaign. They saw 10 saves. Really great effort in Lisbon. We love all our volunteers. In Portugal, you're doing an incredible job. In Croatia, we have 35 vigils in 33 locations, thousands of volunteers. They had a couple who were having their 5th baby, told by the doctor it was a disability, but the volunteers reached out to that family, and the family chose life. And lots of signs everywhere. Even Maria's husband in Split turned up on his motorbike to the vigil, perhaps the coolest volunteer that we know internationally around the world. But around the world, we've had thousands of volunteers. We've had so many lives saved. In Bangalore, a huge multimedia display from our very first campaign in Bangalore in India. We're doing a really, really great job. We've also recruited South Korea for the next campaign, and I'm in awe of what God is doing in the local campaigns. I look forward to hearing more stories of abortion centres closing like this one, babies saved, and to God be the glory. Let's see more campaigns around the world.
Thank you, Robert, and it's such a great sight to see that go on in other countries. We hear all the time, this is an American thing, it won't work here, and these aren't American abortion doctors aborting American babies. They're British abortion doctors aborting British babies, and in all the other countries. You'll hear from more later on with Lourdes Varela. But thank you, Robert, for that world tour. It just shows that prayer has no border. Okay, so earlier we mentioned the landlord, and this was one of the great stories, because we've had a few stories like this in the past where landlords are like, I am sick of you people, get out of here, I will lease to whoever I want, and you're driving me crazy, and my other businesses are complaining. And it's not our fault, we didn't lease to an abortion facility. And so we're out there, we're in the public right away, and it can really wear on these landlords. But this was a great story of someone who, it didn't end in anger.
Yeah, we teased him before. Dr. Jay Walton is we've said a lot of different folks can lead 40 Days for Life campaigns. We've had 18-year-old high school students, we've had 90-year-olds, we've had retired Army colonels, homeschooling moms. I think this is the first professional tuba player we have had lead a 40 Days
He is definitely the first, yeah.
But he's not joining us live. I sat down earlier this week and I talked to Dr. Jay Walton, because I think he filled out the change of address form and now pretty much lives at his 40 Days for Life vigil.
Right.
But earlier this week I had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with Jay Walton about his first 40 Days for Life vigil in Owings Mills, Maryland. Well, we're joined now by Dr. Jay Walton, the 40 Days for Life campaign leader from Owings Mills, Maryland. Dr. Walton, how are you today?
Hi, thank you so much, Steve, for having me on the interview.
We are I've just been delighted to see you. You're a first-time leader, first time ever that there's been a campaign at the abortion facility in Owings Mills. I think most people around the country would not look toward Maryland as an example of a pro-life state. And so perhaps making it a state issue or a local issue would not immediately seem apparent to be a winning strategy. So even living in a state that is very friendly to the abortion industry, what kind of success did you see during the 40 days?
People would drive by, and this one gentleman drove by earlier on in the campaign, and it's freezing here in Baltimore. You know, it's during the you call it the spring campaign. It ain't spring here. You know, in March it's freezing and snow and ice and sleet, and people drove by. They gave us this one gentleman drove by, gave us $100, said, I want to see more signs, more pro-lifers, you know, let's shut this thing down. And all of the money we gave to the speakers that came to our midpoint rally and our closing celebration. We have one of the largest 40 Days for Life campaigns here in Maryland. At just one campaign, we have over 130 volunteers. That's not including the ones that pray from home. I'm talking about 130 people that have come to we call it the sidewalk of sanctity. If that is the altar of convenience that we're praying in front of, we have over 130 volunteers who came from not just Maryland. We had people that came from West Virginia and Pennsylvania too, to come pray to end abortion here in Baltimore County.
And during the course of your vigil, you struck up something of a relationship with the guy who owns the facility that leases space to the abortion facility. How did that come about?
Every morning he saw us. We were there before he got to work, and we were there after he left work. We were there when it was 20 degrees out, you know, when it was some days towards the end, it was up in the 60s, but he saw us picking up trash. If people would throw stuff at us, we would pick it up and clean it up. And sometimes for me, I would be out there. Mostly I committed, my Lenten promise was to be out there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day.
You
So
personally were there for those 10 hours a day.
I was there. I clocked about 320 hours.
Wow.
So I've suffered, but I felt like, you know, that's one of the successes, at least for me, is I was able to take Jesus off of the pages, and I had to rely on his strength to get me through it. He saw how peaceful we were, how prayerful we were. On day 38, first campaign, this usually happens years and years and years down the line. On day 38, his Mercedes pulls up and he rolls down the window. And I go over to him and I say, we're having our closing celebration tomorrow. Do you want to come? He said, Jay, I ain't come to your closing celebration. But he said, I want you to make an announcement. And I knew about, I'm getting teary right now thinking of it, but he said, enough is enough. I'm not going to renew the lease to the abortion clinic. It's called FemiCare Surgery Center. You know, where we are is it's a very high traffic area, and a lot of people a lot of his tenants that are in his buildings throughout Baltimore, they would come up and say, wait, why is 40 Days for Life here? I work here, not in the abortion clinic. And I would say, well, there's an abortion clinic over there, and oddly enough, it's hidden behind a daycare. So there are dozens and dozens of his tenants who have spoken to him and said, you know what, I can't, I'm pro-life, and I can't keep giving you money if there's an abortion mill on your property. So after 38 days, we at least got a promise. We're going to have to keep going back out there and make sure he sticks to his promise. We'll be out there until that thing closes.
Well, Dr. Walton, congratulations on a great first campaign, a great campaign overall. And we will look forward to praying with you again this September 22nd through October 31st.
Thank you so much, Steve. And God willing, we'll be there in September.
Well, that was an awesome testimony, and he's definitely the first tuba player. And he literally, you know, Matt joked earlier, we can't have him here live because he's always at the vigil. And so it's great. He is extremely dedicated. He literally, lived out there. And so it was an awesome story. And right now we're going to go to the Latin American campaign director, Lourdes Varela. And Latin America is very significant for 40 Days for Life because we as countries, mainly England and the United States, we've exported abortion throughout Latin America. We've gone into these countries through our government and often corporations, and we've told people who love children, who love families, you ought not breed. And somehow we've convinced ourselves that we're serving them by telling them that, and it's just elitism at its core. But these countries don't look at us and say, the heck with you, you brought this into my culture. You know, you brought contraception, you brought abortion, you told us we need it. It's all Planned Parenthood, pro familia is what they call themselves throughout Latin America. But they don't resent us for that. They've knocked on our door, and the biggest growth of 40 Days for Life just in the last few years has been throughout Latin America, and that is through the wonderful leadership of Lourdes Varela. So Lourdes, take it away.
Hi everyone, this is Lourdes Varela from 40 Days for Life in Latin America, and we have great news about the results that we had. Just last campaign we learned about more than 50 lives saved from abortion, but also for workers that had a conversion and they just stopped working for the abortion industry. And we learned that the campaign leader of Guatemala, in Guatemala we have the 40 Days for Life campaign in front of the Congress because there is no abortion centers. Thanks also for the campaigns of 40 Days for Life, because when Planned Parenthood arrived to Guatemala, they received the permission to work there in that country, but the volunteers just kept in prayers, and also they had some voice with the president, and finally it was presidential mandatory that the Planned Parenthood had not received any permission to work in Guatemala. And even more, the last campaign, they received a call because the campaign leader received an award because of her pro-life job. Imagine, receive an award from the Congress. That's impossible in any country, because many times we received insults or another kind of things, but not an award. And the campaign leader received an award because she have a recognition from the government of her pro-life job. And now there is a constitution or a group from the government that is in charge of life and family. And I think, and I'm convinced that this is because the prayers of the volunteers in Guatemala and in the world. So just keep praying. And now we have 40 Days for Life 365. I have a shift, and I encourage you to have a shift in 40 Days for Life 365, because perseverance is very important in the US, in Latin America, and in the world. Let's keep in prayers. And the greatest news is that another abortion center just closed in Mexico City. It was Mary Stops from Aragon, and Mary Stops used to have 10 abortion centers in Mexico City. Now they just have 7. So keep praying, because abortion will end soon.
Thank you, Lourdes. And as I mentioned earlier, we've had so much growth with 40 Days for Life. And I'm joined now by Matt Britton, our general counsel. We're going to talk about a topic, packing the court, in a moment that is frustrating. We're even having to talk about that. But we do need to address it.
What's that?
Yeah, we're going to get to what that is and why it's really bad. We had Jay on earlier. I know you went to his campaign.
I did. It was awesome.
The first tuba player ever to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign.
I told my kids after I went out there, and I told my kids, I said, tuba player. You could get into any university if you're a tuba or piccolo. I'm thinking, so I'm going to get a tuba and a piccolo. I'm thinking piccolo with 8 kids is going to be a little quieter.
Yeah.
So I might go with piccolo, but I figure you can get it. He's
always out there.
He's such a happy, exuberant guy. And, you know, the abortion facility is at the back of I know you heard this, but at the back of a daycare center. And, you know, we've had that before when we were in Munich, where I've been 2 or 3 times with Robert, I think Robert the Great, they call him now. That he should really be the king. Because I mean, what's happening?
No longer Robert the Bruce.
Yeah, not Robert the Bruce. He's denied his Scottish last name. He's Robert the Great. He's going to be their next king on their money and all that. Or Meghan Markle. We're not sure.
Yeah, he makes a lot of Meghan Markle jokes.
Yeah, he really does.
We don't keep up with all that.
But, and I told him about Munich. You know, Munich, the abortion facility was above a kindergarten in Germany, and the abortionist came out one day. It was pouring rain, and he said, I love what I do. I'm teaching my son to do what I do, and I hope you all die. That's what he said to us. Mostly Croatians and Germans out there. It was unbelievable. And so I told Jay, you're not the only one. You know, as horrible as we think it is, it gets worse or worse what people deal with all over the world. He was out there, and it was cold when I was out there. It was really cold. And he was out there every day that his team was out there for 40 days. And it was his first campaign. And the miracle that abortion facility owner that owns the whole complex that they couldn't even see drove by and said, enough is enough, I'm going to shut this down. I mean, it's just what one person can do, what God can do through one person in one campaign.
And he was dedicated. It's easy to recruit volunteers when you're out there and you're signing up yourself to go out there. So he's a great example of a leader, and he's one of the reasons, as we're on the Grassroots Webcast, 40 Days for Life has just exploded the last few years. I mean, we're always saying it's the largest fall campaign ever. It's the largest spring campaign ever. And we saw that in 2019 for sure, especially after the release of Unplanned. We had a lot of new people come into 40 Days for Life, and it wasn't a one and done. They stayed. And last year, 2020, a year that everyone would like to forget, we had our largest campaign ever in the spring. We had our largest campaign ever then again in the fall. And it hasn't stopped in 2021. We mentioned earlier it was the largest spring campaign ever, 567 cities. And we need to have large campaigns at the grassroots because we have elected the most pro-abortion government in U.S. history. And all this stuff was going on in the elections. And you got asked about it a lot. We got asked about it a lot about will they pack the court? And, you know, Biden wouldn't even answer the question in the fall when he was asked about it, which was also...
Said he wouldn't do it when he was senator.
It wasn't comforting when he wouldn't address the question. And just recently, hopefully most folks saw this, he put together a committee to explore the idea of packing the court. And then Bryan commented on it. So I want to ask you, just because this gets thrown around a lot, first off, what is packing the court?
Well, first, you said 2020, a year that we would like to forget. You know, in terms of presidential politics, that's a year that was really good for the unborn. Right? I mean, and now, 2021, we need 40 Days for Life and the great participants and prayer warriors and people like Jay to pick up and say, I can no longer walk beside or drive beside or get on the subway in front of a daycare center with an abortion clinic behind it. I got to do something because the government certainly is. And, you know, we're not promised anything in this life anyway. I mean, there's presidents and justices. And to answer your question, court packing is a way to politicize the court more than it already is. We know that when you're president of the United States, you get to make appointments, and then they go before the Congress through the Senate, and they either vote up or down. We all remember Bork. He refused to prepare in any way, shape, or form. He said, I'm going to go in there and do it, and he didn't get appointed. Some people, like Merrick Garland's appointment, got blocked when Obama put him up as a lame duck, and it depends on who's in power. As both sides have now said, there are consequences to both winning and losing elections. One of those consequences is that you can, if you feel as though you're losing, now there's a perceived 6-3 conservative majority. I would say that there's a 5-4 conservative majority. Chief Justice Roberts, just again, I believe last week, voted against. He was joined the liberal minority in the California case, knocking down religious freedom. It was 5-4. Praise be to God that Amy Barrett got in there. Or else there would be less religious freedom than they have in California, if you can believe that. But it's really a 5-4 majority. So the new president can look with his minions and his vice president and can say, what can I do about this to defeat this 5-4 majority? Oh, I know what I can do. I can add a bunch more Supreme Court justices. Actually, we haven't had 9, or we haven't always had 9, excuse me. We've had more. This is what they do in some other countries. It leads to a destabilization of the court itself, which is supposed to be independent. We know that's not actually true, but they're supposed to sit up in their ivory tower, pull the shades down literally, and not look out at the protests on the street. That's happening less and less. The justices are coming out. Justice Thomas, praise be to God, said that he would overturn Roe v. Wade, a law that even the notorious RBG said was bad law and everybody knows it. Right? But of course, she was presumably for abortion. I think we know that, but she thought that that was the wrong case and bad law. So packing the court is adding a bunch more justices. So presumably, he could say 5-4, how many do I need? I need at least 2 because I've got Roberts in my pocket. If I don't have Robert, maybe I need 3. So let me put 5. Then Biden loses, someone else comes back, or Pence wins, or whatever it is.
They're just trading it back
and then he
forth.
says, oh, now I need 4 and 5. And suddenly you have 129 because you keep doing it. It's a lifetime appointment, right? They could put term limits on it and try and change the Constitution. But this is a way to politicize the court to ensure that they're not following the Constitution, they're not following the rule of law. They are creating law from the bench based on politics.
And Justice Breyer went out, and he spoke at Harvard recently, and said, this isn't a good idea. And I read that, we were talking about this. Does that matter, what the current justices think?
It does. But RBG said it didn't matter. That she was against it. Most of the people who are in power now, they have them. I can't quote it verbatim, but when they were senators, talked against it. Some people who are liberals who are for it now said that's ridiculous. We're not going to do that. But what Breyer said is the truth, which is, as you know, Ginsburg was her best friend on the court allegedly was Scalia. Right? I mean, these people know that they are the brightest and best legal minds in the country, and they are out to do what they believe is the best and follow the law, at least in the context of conservative, strict constructionalists. This is what the Constitution says. I can't change it. It says that you have the right to free speech, and therefore we're not going to deny someone the right to free speech, because if obnoxious speech to you isn't protected, then what are you protected tomorrow, or are you protected the next day?
And they, with the pro-life movement, when they've tried to put a buffer zone, which you've talked a lot about, the Supreme Court's always backed the pro-life movement.
Almost.
Justices.
Twice they haven't. In Chicago and identical statutes, an 8-foot floating buffer zone in Colorado, and Colorado v. Hill and Chicago v. Price. Almost always.
Ginsburg said they're un-American.
They are, right, and it is un-American. If you can't get out, as they said, it's unbelievable to think that you could be on the street and ask directions or ask someone for the time, but you can't talk about the most important thing in our world today, abortion, which is dividing America. You can't sit out there and talk to a fellow American about it. And we are seeing these types of buffer zones come up all over the world. We're fighting them. 40 Days for Life is fighting them in Canada, in the UK, New Zealand, and Australia, and other places where they're trying to stop free speech. They don't have the First Amendment. They don't have a constitutional right to the freedoms that we have. They have political rights of free speech, statutory guarantees. They can be changed by whim. That's what's so important about the court. It's not a legislature. It doesn't make law. It interprets the law. Not every law can be written perfectly. Obviously, what does it mean when it says you have the right to free speech? Nothing is absolute, right?
But if the current Supreme Court comes out and says, we don't know what Biden's talking about, that he doesn't need a search committee to look into this, does it matter what they think? Do they have any authority or say on whether he can pack the court?
No.
Okay.
But I think that it matters what they think, to answer the first question, but I don't think that they would have any authority on what he or the Congress could do in order to pack the court. But when you have a liberal Justice Breyer, it's amazing how they're cannibalizing themselves. There's a truck driving around the United States Supreme Court with a huge neon sign that says, like, Breyer be gone, or it rhymes.
Yeah, they want him to retire.
Right,
So
retire Breyer. That's what it says.
Breyer.
Retire
That's
Breyer.
yeah.
That's right. That's what it says. Thank you, you're a better poet.
But that's those are the liberals saying that.
Yeah,
I mean,
They
people
want
should
him
know.
gone because he's old, and they don't want someone else to get in that would be more conservative than he is, and they want to get more justices. And he came out and said, I know these people. I work with these people being the other 8 justices and the other many justices that he has worked with. And these are good people. You may not agree with the way they decide, but these are people who are trying to follow the law. And to make this another legislative body,
right.
and he was vociferous against it. He was completely against it. He's talking at Harvard, so it's
right.
presumably not a very, they weren't on his side. Presumably, and yet he said it, and every single justice that I know of is and has been against it. Not because it will dilute their ability, but because it's bad for America, just like Ginsburg said.
I think if you're in your living room watching this, or you've heard this about they want Breyer to retire and they want to pack the court, this is why Americans have to do something, or wherever you live, you have to do something. You cannot rely on the Supreme Court. You cannot rely on your government. This is once again another example of that, but you can go out and use these rights that men and women have died so that we could have, or you'll lose them. And whether they pack the court or not, and we're obviously going to follow this and hope that they don't, they can't stop us from going out there.
And praying. That's why we pray first, right?
Yeah.
Prayer and fasting, because that's what our Lord told us to do. And then, if we can, outreach, community outreach. But community outreach also is telling your pro-life politicians that you support them, is telling people what you believe that the laws should be. But this thing is not going to be, they could change it back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
But if no woman will seek an abortion, and no doctor will do it, it doesn't matter how many people are on the Supreme Court. It doesn't matter if there's a constitutional right to abortion. If they change the Constitution by 75% of the states or whatever it is, I'm a lawyer, I should know that, but I think that's what it is, and they change the Constitution to say there's a constitutional right to abortion actually in the document, not the made-up one.
Right.
And if no woman will seek an abortion, they say, no, I will take my womb back to the safest place on earth, and no doctor will use the skills that God gave them to kill instead of preserve life, then it doesn't matter how bad our laws are. And I think that's the power of 40 Days for Life.
And that's the power, too, of our next part of this video webcast, because we're going to go, to the heart of the matter. We're talking about
great book.
These
great book, by the way.
We're talking about these laws.
Classic,
and
right.
all of these things.
1984. Sun also rises to the heart of the matter.
That's right. Well,
it's right up there. Can I be in the movie?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I don't want to do it.
But we are going to bring on Dr. Haywood Robinson now, who
Great
is
guy.
actually great guy, and he is in this building. This is, I mentioned earlier, the former Planned Parenthood abortion facility where 40 Days for Life first started, and Haywood cuts through everything. Because in the end, pack the court, don't pack the court, pro-abortion government, pro-life president, every abortion kills a baby, that it's the only surgery that you're not supposed to survive. That's the goal of it. And he is in the room right now where many of those 6,400 abortions took place. And right now we're going to go to Dr. Robinson, who himself is a former abortion doctor.
Thank you, Sean. I'm in a different part of the building that used to be the now closed Planned Parenthood facility in Bryan College Station, Texas. Sean was in what was once the reception room where the women would be waiting to be called down the hall to be brought into a room like this one right here. This was one of the rooms where the abortions were performed at Planned Parenthood. Those of you that saw the movie Unplanned, where Abby Johnson was assisting with an ultrasound guided abortion and received a revelation of the evil that she was involved in. It was in a room just like this where Dr. Levantino, who was also a former abortionist, as I, played the character of the abortionist in the movie. I'm here as a stark and somber reminder of why you do, why we do what we do for 40 Days for Life. It's because in rooms like this, 3,000 babies are killed every day in the United States, and approximately 60 million since Roe v. Wade was passed. This is why we do what we do. You fast, you pray, persistently, consistently, 40-day campaigns twice a year because of what we do to women in rooms like this. The abortion procedure only takes approximately 7 to 10 minutes. The remains of the baby were put in a pass-through in the wall here, and the remains would be put in a place mockingly referred to as the nursery. The doctor would leave this room and go to another room where he would do the same thing. The woman in this room where he just finished would be taken down the hall to an area where she would recover, so to speak. She'd be given a cracker, some juice, and then basically sent out on the street, forever changed. So this is why we do what we do. It's because of the evil that goes on in rooms like this across the United States and all the other countries where 40 Days for Life is actively working. This is why we do what we do. I want to thank you for being involved with the campaign. You've heard the reports. We celebrate it. But we've got to keep in mind why we do what we do. We're 6,400 babies that lost their lives in this particular building. That means about 3,000 babies were killed in this room alone over the time that Planned Parenthood was killing babies here at headquarters. I was blessed to spend the last few years of my medical practice in this building also. A blessing to be a part of 40 Days and then to be able, as a former abortionist, to work in a place that the Lord changed from a killing center to a healing center and a place of ministry for 40 days. Again, thank you. We look forward to our fall campaign where we will continue to do what we do because of what happens in rooms like this. God bless you, and back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson and Steve. We talked about the power of a former Planned Parenthood manager speaking at a 40 Days for Life vigil. It's really powerful when you have a former abortion provider, and one of the many reasons why we're so blessed to have Haywood on our team since he's retired from medicine is he always keeps perspective on what this is. at the Grassroots, that no matter the noise that's going on in the world, abortion kills a baby, and we can do something to go out there and stop it. So what a gift he is to the pro-life movement, and certainly to 40 Days for Life. We've talked a lot about the Grassroots. There's a lot of momentum in the Grassroots. Last year, we took a big step. It was years in the making of taking some of our elite campaigns year-round, and we launched 40 Days for Life 365, and this is our first full year of doing that. We had a lot of cities sign up to do this, but this really drives down, it kills the abortion business, no pun intended. When your campaign leading in, you have people out there, then 40 Days for Life comes along, you recruit more volunteers, and then after the day 40 happens, you're still out there. And that's when you see a lot of abortion facility workers leave. You see more babies saved. It's what closed this place of just year after year being outside and being present. And Steve, now that we're actually, nearly halfway into 2021, we're seeing awesome results at the 365 locations.
Yeah, it's been really incredible because we did a pilot program last year where we started out with 5 locations just to test it out, make sure that this thing had all the resources and tools and training that local leaders need. And then we launched it worldwide. And so we have right now 43 cities around the world. There was a while it looked like it would be exactly 40. It was too poetic. We weren't going to tell people you can't pray because it ruins the number. We said, no, we'll do 43. For 43 around the world. And they just hit the ground running. And they did so at the hardest point of the year, which is January, where in so much of the year it's cold. People are coming off of Christmas and a million reasons not to go pray, but they didn't make excuses. They went out, and we've seen results there. San Antonio, 10 saved babies so far outside of the 40 Days for Life campaign. Our friends Rachel and Suzanne, who lead the 40 Days for Life campaign in Marietta outside of Atlanta, they saved 7 babies during 40 Days for Life and 7 babies during 40 Days for Life 365. We had a wonderful testimony in Aurora, Illinois, where a man came to the vigil. He drove up and he said, "We were going to end our baby's life, but you were here, so we chose life, and thank you for your help." And this guy's just, a mile a minute, just thanking the people for being out on the streets. And Sean, that presence has gotten even more effective with some new messaging that we just deployed.
Yeah, we launched something else earlier this year, thanks to you who donated. One of the great examples of how your donations go straight to the front lines of the culture war when we sent our leaders new signs for messaging. We had tested these messages for years and said every 40 Days for Life vigil needs to have these signs, and we had them during the 40 Days for Life campaign, but the 365 folks were the first to get them, and we got just instant feedback from these new signs.
Yeah, one of them says, "You don't have to do this today." This gives that little incentive to stop and think twice about it. Ask me about a free ultrasound, and we will help you. And so these are just conversation starters. Sometimes it's tough to be out there and have a sidewalk counseling conversation, because even if you're a trained sidewalk counselor, you might have 4 or 5 seconds maximum to try to open that door to a conversation about the life-saving pregnancy help resources available in a community. But when you've got that big old sign out there, bold lettering, easy to read, there are women who are stopping and they're, "Oh, you will help me? What kind of help are we talking about here?"
And they're told going in, there's a lot of prep that Planned Parenthood will do for a woman who's going to have an abortion, that these people are crazy, they don't care about you, they're going to yell at you, they're going to tell you that you're going to burn in hell and all these things. So this wall is up when they drive into the abortion facility. And it's taken down when those signs are out there. It's taken down anyways by the fact that we're out there and we're law-abiding, we're peaceful, but the signs say the opposite of what they're told. And it creates a wedge between them and Planned Parenthood and allows some of those conversations to come about. So thank you all who donated to that. We have some more messaging and more signs that we're going to be doing in the next few months. We are opening up applications to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign, and
or a 365.
Or a 365. And if you lead a 365, you also have to lead 2 40 Days for Life campaigns. So it is kind of for those elite campaigns. It's hard to do, but when you can do it, man, does it have a tremendous impact on closing your abortion facility and certainly saving many more babies from abortion. And so we have a lot coming, and it's going to be a big year. As we open up applications on June the 1st to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign or to lead a 40 Days for Life 365, We do so at the Grassroots at a time when there's so much momentum in 40 Days for Life, but in the grassroots pro-life movement at large, as we work with the thousands of pregnancy resource centers across the country. And it's a tremendous blessing to have this momentum, but it's momentum that is needed now more than ever in the United States and around the world where 40 Days for Life takes place. As we see not just the 56 million abortions that take place every single year, but how complicit our culture is in this destruction. That's one of the reasons we had that powerful testimony from Dr. Haywood Robinson, that this is what it is and this is what it's not. And it's not the rhetoric that we hear about privacy or choice or any of that. It is bloody, it is messy, and it is barbaric. And yet we, by the grace of God, get to do something about that. And so there's a lot of momentum. We're going to continue to build 40 Days for Life 365 that we just talked about. We plan on adding more of those locations this summer. We have a busy time coming up for 40 Days for Life. The busiest time for us behind the scenes is now, is when we're getting ready to open up applications after a campaign. We will train hundreds of leaders in person this summer. We were very grateful that last year we got to go to the great state of Georgia where we could have our in-person leader symposium. We will have that event again this summer, and we will train leaders in new cities. We'll train leaders in campaigns we've had for many, many years. But that is the bread and butter of 40 Days for Life. And it's something, as we mentioned before, that the abortion industry simply does not have at the Grassroots. They are very top heavy. They put their money in Madison Avenue marketing. They put their money in the courts, and they put their money in Washington, D.C. And sadly, that's working out for them really well right now, but it's not working out for them at the Grassroots, and that's because of you. And so tonight we are asking for financial donations. We don't ask through email during the campaign, and we never will, but we are asking for gifts tonight. If you're able to give, we have another group of wonderful donors who put together a matching challenge that is on your screen, and that amount on your screen will be matched dollar for dollar if you give it in the next week. The matching challenge goes through next Tuesday, April 27th at midnight. And so if you are able to give $25 or $50 or $100, or you're able to become a monthly donor at $10 a month, whatever you can give. This is on the internet. You can turn it off at any moment. So there's no pressure to give. But if you can give, that is going to go to the front lines during this time when we have so much good going on at a time when we need to have good going on in the grassroots pro-life movement. So I want to encourage all of you, if you are able, these are tax-deductible gifts. Please give an amount towards the match. Frankly, this has been an easy way for us to raise funds so that we have more time to focus on our mission. Doing these matching challenges after each campaign, it means we're not running around and fundraising the entire year. We're focused on abortion facilities at the local level, which is where our mission is. And so thank you for those of you who have given in the past, and I want to encourage, if you haven't given, please consider a donation. It'll all be matched dollar for dollar up to that amount through Tuesday, April 27th at midnight. You see the link on this site. If you want to click on it, you can give a one-time gift. You can also sign up to be a monthly donor. And I want to thank all of our monthly donors because they really allow us to focus on our mission even more, because we can project how much money is coming in the next 12 months based on those pledges. And so I really want to thank them for doing that. But give a one-time gift, give a monthly gift. We're going to give you some fuel as we head into late spring and summer, as we open up applications on June the 1st. If you give a gift of $40, we're going to send you a copy of The Beginning of the End of Abortion, which really shows and highlights the beauty of what God is doing at the local level. So if you give a donation, $1 a day for the campaign, you give a gift of $40, you'll get a copy of The Beginning of the End of Abortion. That's on its 5th printing. And so if you give that, you'll get a signed copy. If you give a gift of $65, you'll get a copy of The Beginning of the End of Abortion. And then To the Heart of the Matter, both of those are 40-day devotionals and take you through a 40-day time period. You'll also get a copy at $65 of a donation of Steve Carlin's new book, This Is When We Begin to Fight, which shows what can happen where he was in his liberal city of Madison, Wisconsin, and he helped prevent late-term abortions in his hometown, all while battling infertility at home. Just a beautiful story. So for $65, you'll get those 3 books. And if you give $100, you'll get all 3 books, The Beginning and the End of Abortion, To the Heart of the Matter, This Is When We Begin to Fight, an unplanned DVD, and a DVD of Life Journey. For those of you who saw that, and thank you for all your support for that, but that documentary where we highlight 40 Days for Life and how abortion has impacted people from different backgrounds. And so you'll get the 2 DVDs and 3 books if you give a gift of $100. But tonight, of course, we need donations. We were asking for gifts. But more importantly, please pray for this work. 40 Days for Life has grown. It has expanded. We have done so much behind the scenes to catch up with the growth, and we have caught up with it. And now we're able to serve our local leaders better than we ever have before. We're able to give them more resources, more tools that go directly on those sidewalks where, thank God, we have the freedom of speech to go out and send this basic message that there is a hope out there for you where you do not have to pay a physician to end the life of your child. And the donors make that possible, and we don't forget it. So thank you for all of your support, whatever you can give. Again, the match ends next Tuesday, April 27th, and all of your donations will be matched dollar for dollar through there. If you want to mail in your donation, it just needs to be postmarked by April 27th, and there's a form on this page you can download, put your check in, and then mail it. It will go towards the match. So thank you for all those of you who have already given, and please keep this work in your prayers. And you know, earlier tonight we mentioned the 7 abortion facility workers who have had a change of heart and left their jobs, and there's a lot who didn't. There's a lot who question their job for the first time. Pray for those workers as we closed out the campaign, and pray for those moms. You know, we mentioned the over 700 babies that were saved, and praise God for that. But there are a lot more that didn't turn around, that almost did, or that just ignored us completely, and they had an abortion. And we don't forget them either. That's why we have this memorial behind us, because it is a constant reminder of why we do this battle and ultimately who we fight for, which is God Almighty. So thank you for those of you who have given, and we appreciate all of the support. And I'll now close this webcast out with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve you in this harvest, where the fruit can be explained by your love and by your mercy, going into places that so many would say is a waste of time and is not worth it. We know it's worth it despite rain or snow or heat. We know it's worth it because all of these children are made in your image and likeness. Please give us the fortitude and the courage to continue to be vessels of your love and your mercy in the darkest corners of our culture. And as we do this, we trust ourselves to your victory on the cross as we just celebrated Easter. And we know that ultimately this victory is yours. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight on the webcast. I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. Please continue to pray for this work. We'll be sending out a lot more results over the coming days and weeks. If you have not already, please subscribe to the 40 Days for Life podcast, which is available everywhere podcasts are available, and you can get it on our website. We have a lot going on behind the scenes and a lot of information coming out over the next few weeks, so your prayers are appreciated. Thank you for joining us, and good night.